Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to Ranking the Albums. And look who's back in the co-captain's chair, Mr. Nick Franco. What's happening, my friend? How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be back. I missed you and the show and everything, so I'm happy to be back. Excited about Borknagar.
There you go. One of Nick's favorite bands, and probably, if they're not my favorite black metal band, they're number 2 or 3, depending on what month it is we talk about it. So we're going to be ranking the studio albums from Borknagar. We got 11 of them. And I will just say right off the bat, this was really hard because these guys do not have a bad album. And so many of them are such like high quality, equally good. If we were to do this again in a month, my list might be entirely different.
Yeah, they are a unique band in that world because, like you said, I mean, yes, they started it as black metal. They always have a foot or two in that world, but they're so proggy, and they're talking about a band that they've had a plethora of vocalists, a blessing, of vocalists, and they're incredible, always changing.
Yeah, this is one of those black metal bands that, you have some of the bands that get tagged with that kind of like atmospheric symphonic black metal, like a Dimmu, and there's a couple others, right? These guys are different. These guys probably, I think the only other band I could kind of compare them to, and they don't sound anything alike, is Enslaved, because they fully embrace like 70s progressive rock. They fully embrace folk. There's the symphonic elements. The music is heavy as all hell. It's totally extreme, but it's big, it's epic, and I love how they kind of play off the extreme vocals and the clean vocals. And they've had a bunch of wonderful singers. We're going to talk about them, I'm sure, during these albums. And man, all their releases are like chock full of like this musical majesty that you never know what's coming next. Yeah. And it's really, really just absolutely irresistible music that I urge anybody, if you've got this preconceived notion of what black metal is, these guys are not that at all. Yes, they're a black metal band at their core. That's where they came from. They still inject plenty of that in all their albums, but man, the albums are just gorgeous. They're as potent and savage as they are gorgeous, beautiful, thought-provoking. I don't want to give too much away because we're going to talk about all this and more discussing these albums. So I'm going to have Nick kick us off with his number 11.
Okay, well, you are including Origen, that album in it.
Yep.
I would have to say that one. It just didn't strike me, and I don't have a copy of it, so I would say that's my number 11. Yeah, it didn't. It's a beautiful cover, as they always do, with this unbelievable logo. But I would say that's my number 11. Didn't really strike me that much when it came out.
My 10 and 11 were very hard to rank here because the album that Nick just mentioned is so different from the rest of their catalog. I mean, really different, but not in a bad way, I don't think.
Yeah.
But I'm going to not put that at my number 11. I'm going to put that, well, we'll get to it in a minute. My number 11, probably not going to make Nick very happy, but my number 11 is their self-titled debut from 96.
That's okay. We went over this when we did Amorphous. Remember, the oldest one, the rawest one. Yeah, that's them.
It's a great album. Okay. It's just, I think for me, everything that I love so much about this band, not quite happening yet on this first album. But if you like old school, traditional Norwegian black metal, this is a classic, right? I mean, all the lyrics are in Norwegian, right? It's just, it's out of control, raging and violent. It doesn't have all of the symphonic, progressive, and folk elements. There's a little bit. There is a little bit. It's not as melodic as this stuff that came after it, but man, there's still some great songs on here. I'm not going to bother with trying to pronounce all the Norwegian names of the songs, but there are some cool atmospheric passages, but this is pretty like in your face, intense. You got the occasional clean vocal on there. You got Mr. Garm on vocals, who's on the first 2 albums, which is pretty cool. You got now, the leader of this band is Oystein. Has I always said his name, Oystein?
Oystein.
Oystein Brun, but you got to throw the G in there, right? So that's his name. He is the mastermind of this band. He's their guitar player, songwriter. He contributes acoustic guitars and some keyboards here and there. But he's the guy. So he normally has there's always a second guitar player on most of these albums, but here it's all him just by himself. A really good album, easily their most aggressive, violent, savage album. It's their first. I like it. I just think I like all the other ones a little bit better. So that's my number 11.
That is a fair enough assessment. It was certainly raw. They were finding their feet. But yeah. So for me, my number 10 is Universal. The album, again, as we said before, they had a lot of different vocalists in their band, in their lineup. Great vocalists. I have had my ups and downs with the vocalist Winter Sorg, the Swedish guy, Andreas Hedlund, who is still part of the band, and he's got a great growled vocal, but I've just never been so crazy about his clean vocal. And I know I get shit from people into extreme metal all the time, and I like his solo stuff. I have a lot of it, and his voice has grown on me. But there's another vocalist that I will mention, later on, who I see as Vortex, who I am an unabashed, just an absolute, he's one of my favorite vocalists ever. And I think the albums that he wasn't on kind of suffered to me. This one I felt was the least overall, what's the word, inspired effort on their part. Still a good album, but not, definitely sits in my number 10 spot.
Fair enough. I'm going to go with Origin from my number 10. Kind of for the reasons that Nick mentioned before. This is from 2006. This is much more of a stripped down folky affair, right? It's mostly acoustic instruments, acoustic guitars, violin, flute, cello, keyboards. Here you've got Winter Sorg and Lars Nedlund, who's their keyboard player, who does also a lot of the clean vocals. It's an interesting band because at certain times during their history, they've got 3 guys who do clean vocals. 1 or 2 of them does the harsh vocals, and really all 3 of them are great singers. So it's pretty cool. Some good tracks on here. I mean, Earth Imagery is a pretty cool song. What else we got here? Oceans, Rise, The Human Nature. It's a really laid back kind of bare bones album. I'm kind of missing the bombast here, right, and that kind of, obviously that heavy metal feel, right? But I still think it's a fun album. It's a lovely album. And it's almost kind of cool that they have this in their catalog, because it almost for someone who maybe wants to dive into these guys and maybe have a little bit of a respite from time to time from everything else they do, this is pretty cool. It's a neat little oddity in their catalog. I don't mind it. I kind of think.
Yeah, it was their acoustic. They were trying to be more acoustic and stripped down. Ocean's Rise, if you remember, is the opening song on Archaic Course. So they did a stripped down version of that. Yeah. And I felt that, that's sung by His Majesty, ICS Vortex. So I'm like you, it didn't really get me too much. And in keeping with that, my number 9 album is Epic, which, it had some good, there's good songs on it. And again, like you said, they don't really make a bad album. It just didn't get me as much. Future Reminiscence is a good song. But overall, the actual album cover is really cool with the book with the black things coming out of it. But again, it didn't really knock my socks off. That's for sure. And I started. This is 2004. So in that era, I think until a certain point, right around 2010, 2011, I was kind of thinking they just weren't interesting to me as much. And these albums were why. Not bad albums, but not my favorite.
My number 9 from 1997, The Olden Domain. Great album. Love the album cover. I mean, you look at that album cover and you know what you're expecting here. This is the last album with Garm, okay, or otherwise known as, again, check me on the pronunciation here, Christopher Reig. Is that correct?
I think it's Rig. I think it's just
Rig.
Yeah, I think so. But again, we could be wrong.
Who knows? I always just call them Garm.
Yeah, go on.
And here, you have a blend of traditional Norwegian black metal with the start of that kind of epic progressive and the folk elements starting to come through. Some really great songs on here. The Eye of Odin, terrific. The Winter Wake, Grimland Domain, A Tale of Pagan Tongue, all really good stuff. And I like the kind of back and forth between the, the evil rasps and screams and the really majestic, clean vocals. It's amazing how many good singers they've had in this band. They really have. So,
they've
good stuff.
Yeah. They've just been that band that like, Oystein has always been good about, bringing in people into his vision as opposed to, just as like only having like a rigid lineup. So, I think that's been a strength of theirs. Now, my next one, where are we at? Number 8?
8, yep.
Yeah, so I have the vinyl here, Quintessence. And what's funny about this album being placed at number 8 is that it contains my favorite Borknagar song in the world and one of my top 3 or 5 songs ever in my life. And that, of course, is Colossus. And that song is sung by Mr. Vortex. Simon Hesnes, talk about a hard name to say. We'll call him Vortex. But his performance is just the majesty of it in that song. That's always been a song that I've just absolutely loved. I feel like with Quintessence, the first half of the album, Rivalry of Phantoms, The Presence is Ominous, Ruins of the Future, of course, Colossus is really strong. I feel like the second half is not as strong. But again, they're almost dispensing at this point with the black metal elements beyond the vocals and the atmosphere, and they're going with a lot more of a lot more keys, a lot more prog. You have Lars Nedland on keys, on the synthesizer here. He is from the band Solefald and is just an absolutely incredible musician. And you have Asgeir Mikkelsen on drums, who's a pretty magisterial.
Oh yeah,
guy,
he's
right?
a player. That guy. Yep.
Oh yeah. So, but overall as an album, it sits like sort of near the bottom. But Colossus, I even have like one of the lyrics on my arm tattooed. Nothing but the process is infinite. Again, their philosophies were very nature oriented. It's kind of a band that worships nature, but in a less fantastical way than like Immortal. They're just talking about the majesty of actual nature in the north. And man, does that speak to me. Holy shit. So Quintessence.
Yeah, I'm surprised that ranks so low for you. Yeah, that's.
I was too when I did this. I was surprised, but I have to be honest.
There's a lot of good ones here, so yeah, it's tough. But that was the album that really got them noticed, and a lot of people were talking about them when they released that album, right around that time period.
Yep.
All right, number 8, right? Yeah, number 8 is Universal from 2010.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there's the guys in the band right there. Here you've got Wintersorg on, main vocals now. He's the main guy at this point in their career. Lars doing backing vocals, a little bit of lead. I mean, it's a strong album. Not one of their best, but it's a strong album. Got some great lead guitar from Jens Ryland on this album. I think guitar-wise, this is a really strong one. And of course, you got Oystein's riffs are just fantastic. Reason, Havoc, Worldwide, My Domain, Abrasion Tide, for 1,000 Years to Come is another really good one. I mean, I like this album. I love the cover. And I remember when this came out, I was like, wow, these guys just this was like around the time. So this was 2010. So 11 years ago. These guys were just on a roll where like every album that was coming out was just like really, really spectacular. And I was like, wow, is this going to be another one of those bands? And as we've seen now, all these years later, they have been one of those bands, kind of like Enslaved. I hate to keep bringing the parallels up, but you got these 2 bands from Norway that just keep killing it and moving forward and like just knocking it out of the park pretty much every time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, they certainly did not allow themselves to be painted in any corner of what black metal, might have done. They definitely didn't limit themselves at all. One quick note, I wanted to say that Borknagar played Maryland Death Fest the last time they had it, 2019. That's where I got this shirt. And they played Colossus, and I wept, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was only a little drunk. But no, I was
good for you, man. It's okay to cry. It's okay to cry at a concert, man. I've done it too. So
yep, I made friends with a guy standing next to me who flew in from Seattle just to see them, just to see that set.
There you go. Very nice.
So that was cool. Okay, where are we? Number 7.
Number 7.
Yeah, and so I am putting Empiricism up there. I should have taken it out of the sleeve, but Empiricism is a wonderful album. I want to say that 2001. So it was what they made after Quintessence. And by that point, Vortex had joined Dimmu Borgir. And He played on, I think it was Spiritual Black Dimensions, and he elevated him over here. Why? Because his voice is amazing. He did the clean vocals opposite Shagrath's guttural ones, and I was like, oh man, like, because I really felt that, okay, Vortex, Vintersorg is good, but not as good. But you have the Genuine Pulse, Gods of My World. You have Inherit the Earth, Stellar Dome, really, really good prog influenced. It was heavy too.
Yeah.
I think the production wasn't as heavy, but it was still a very good album. So I got to put Empiricism up there, number 7. Very good.
Cool. All right, my number 7. Again, this gets painful, man, because I love these albums so much, and it's like I almost feel bad that an album that's so great is at number 7. But Winter Thrice, with an amazing album cover. I mean, this album rules, right? It's just like, and maybe it's just because it's one of the more recent ones. I mean, this is 2016. I mean, again, we always have these issues with doing these things, right? Because some albums we just have more history with than others.
Right.
And it's unusual, maybe not, we'll see as we get through this, where something that's really recent will shoot right up to the top of a ranking of a catalog that, those who are ranking it have 10, 20, 30 years of experience with, right? So, but this is fantastic. This was a top 10 album of the year for me when it came out. And here we have ICS Vortex, Vintersorg, and Lars Nedlund all singing together on the album. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, these 3 amazing voices, right?
And Garm makes an appearance.
That's right. Yep, he does make a brief appearance on here. Yeah, so it's like, how can you not get giddy about all that, right? And it's a really, really good album. I mean, sadly, Vintersorg and Ryland would both leave the band after this album. I mean, this band's had a lot of lineup changes. It's just kind of what happens. But man, so melodic, so adventurous. The Rhymes of the Mountain, title track, Panorama, Terminus, Cold Runs. I mean, Cold Runs the River. I mean, just just so many good songs, lengthy tracks for the most part. These guys don't do 3-minute songs. Just all these magical, symphonic, progressive metal epics. Again, you got just enough of the black metal thing going on here to, keep everything moving along. But man, lots of great guitar textures and riffs, a lot of keyboards, just really magical stuff. I'd argue that, we mentioned Enslaved, but I mean, think of like Emperor at their most majestic. Not that they sound like Emperor, but I don't know if any band has hit upon that just like epic nature in this genre since then, like these guys.
That's a great point. And, this coming from the same country, all around the same age, all influenced by the same things, which is every bit as, classical music and Judas Priest and
Kiss, right?
Venom, Kiss and Venom, and Bathory and like all that together. That's a great point. And to your point about Jens Ryland, I interviewed him after that album came out, and Winter Thrice, and that guy's a cool guy. We had a great interview, great chat, and he was like, "Yeah, I've been in and out of Borknagar sometimes. I just get wrapped up with life." And then Øystein calls me, and he's like, "Yeah, I need you." Okay, it's just such a. It's funny. It was so much more casual than you would think of a relationship.
You have to wonder if they were a busier touring band, if that would have been different.
Probably not. Yeah. I don't know what they do. Like, I'm sure like a lot of these guys have day jobs, obviously. And I'm not sure to that end, but Øystein has just had an unflappable vision with the band, and yet been very open to having different musicians play with them, which has been just wonderful, like you said. Okay, so we are at the halfway mark-ish, right?
Yeah, number 6. Yep.
Yeah. So, and for me, that's the self-titled Borknagar album. And like you said, you really kind of hit it. It was raw, but it had that mystical beauty that kind of, it wasn't just pure evil, and it had a real, it had some nuance to it. But they were very young and full of just the freedom to just make whatever they wanted. That was one of the great things about black metal, was that it was kind of a fist in the face of all the trends. This was recorded as it says on the back, sporadically in Grieghallen, which was a great studio that produced so much good stuff. And you know what I kind of had to remind myself was that in Furnace, Roger from Borknagar played on this bass, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check my notes. It just says in Furnace, Roger Borknagar. I think he played bass on it, which, you know, that's a heavy, woof, you know, so you had a lot of different minds on this one. Ivar from Borknagar played keys on it. From Enslaved played keys on it. So yeah, it sits in the middle of their discography for me because, like you said, it doesn't have all the progressive nuance that they developed over time, but it's still a hell of an album. So there it is.
Yeah, the whole catalog is like that, basically.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, my number 6 from 2012, Urge, however you say it.
Urge.
Yep. Another cool cover, another album that when it came out, it was a top of the charts album for me, you know, wherever it sat at the end of the year, top 10, top 20, I don't know. I just know I loved it. And this is the first album with the trio of Doom on vocals. So you got Vortex, Winter Sorg, and Nedlin on vocals here. Loads of keyboards. Just a great album, great songs. Roots, Apocalypse, great song. The Earthling. How about the Winter Eclipse? How glorious is that?
That's
track,
a great
right?
song.
Oh my God.
That's a great song.
It really is. Just so epic. Frostwrite. I mean, this stuff is just the perfect marriage of old school Norwegian black metal, progressive rock, and folk metal. It's just all those things put into a blender. Boom, here you go. Absolutely outstanding stuff. There's the guys in the band. Want to show you that.
Yep.
Just fantastic. And, you know, for years I've been saying this is one of those bands. You remember when like Dimmu first like really started breaking big here? And, you know, they worked their tail off to get that. And I totally was happy for them. But, you know, I always kind of wish that these guys would have gotten more exposure here and had that kind of success here. But again, you don't come and tour here on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, I mean, Dimmu Borgir Silanos had a different kind of vision. I think he wanted to conquer the world in a way that Borknagar didn't feel they needed to, which, you know, I think looking back, I mean, you know, to me, Borknagar is 10 times the band they are. And they've done some good things, but not in a while. I think they got too into pop and not as much into like the actual song, just my opinion. But that's a good point, good comparison point. Number 5 for me is the Olden Domain, which a lot of my friends that are into like really extreme black metal and such, like I was talking to Ryan Scow from our other show before, and this is his favorite Borknagar album. But to me, it sits almost halfway. I love that. Isn't that great? Again, like you said, you know, the Winter Way, the Eye of Odin. This is where you really started to see, and right away, second album, you started to see that they were going to be something more than just a black metal band. And they wrote some really, really great atmospheric laden beauties on this one. So definitely a cool. I have the CD, you know, and the CD I have is from that. It's a Century Black, I think. It's old, like me.
You're not that old, man. Come on. Wait to get to be my age, and then we can talk.
Oh, you're 30.
Yeah. I wish. All right. Where are we? Number 5?
Yes, you're
number 5. All right. Well, I'm going to go with the most recent one, True North from 2019. Fantastic album. Symphonic, brutal, you know, Mr. Vortex and Mr. Nedlin singing up a storm on here, sharing the lead vocals. It's just fantastic. The music, though, you know, again, still really adventurous and epic. These guys just don't lay up on that at all. You got Thunderous, which is a pretty thunderous track. Up North is great. The Fire That Burns. Mount Rapture. Amazing stuff here. And it just, and the production is so good. I think if I remember correctly, in 2019, we did like a best of the year show at Rock Fantasy with Keel. And I think you and I both had this. This was a top 10 for both of us, if I remember correctly. I don't know about for Steve, but yeah, it's just fantastic stuff. And that's them today, right?
Yeah, looking good.
Hoisting and Company.
Yeah.
Looking good. So that's my number 5.
Great one. So for number 4, I will go to Archaic, of course. this was, believe it or not, this was my first Borknagar album. Gotta get these vinyls, man. Look at that. I love it again.
That's pretty cool.
See that whatever that is, that design is on a lot of their CDs. So I remember, if you have their CDs, don't take them out and put them in a CD sleeve, because you won't know which album is which. They always put, like, they'll throw a Q on for Quintessence, but they have that design on every CD. Very confusing band. Anyway,
yes.
The Archaic Course.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
They all look exactly the same.
Yeah. So the song on this for me is Ad Noctem. Now they have a knack, unlike a lot of bands, Borknagar, one of the reasons they're such a favorite band of mine is that, just like Colossus, there's other ones I'll talk about as we go, but they'll just all of a sudden they'll write a song that is so goddamn like adventurous and amazing and like jumps out at you. And for me, that song is Ad Noctem. It's got this I don't have the musician language, but it almost sounds like a Hammond organ to me. It might, I don't know. Is that a type of organ or a type of sound?
Yeah.
But if there's a sound that's like, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Someone will correct me. But it just has this wicked keyboard sound through it. It's like, it's kind of about a rushing mountain stream, or, being up in the hills and no trails, and it takes you there. Like, they have that ability to take you right where they want to take you. So Ad Noctem jumped out at me as one of, like, just a song I just used to play over and over and over and over again. I still do. So
yeah, they use Hammond organ on their albums. Let's see, we got synthesizer, and they don't really say on here. I probably have to look it up, but I mean, they've used Hammonds, they've used electric pianos and other kind of synths, and I think they even use Mellotron on one or two of their albums. So
yeah. I don't want to say the wrong thing, because in my head I've always thought, this one was recorded in Woodhouse Studios, which is a famous studio. Trying to see the synthesizer by Ivar Bjornsson again on this one. So Ivar from Enslaved was doing the synths on these. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
This was mid 90s. A lot of bands were going real symphonic, or they were doubling down like Marduk and just playing as fast and inhumanly evil as possible. But Borknagar was making these proggy masterpieces, doing whatever they wanted. So yeah, Archaic Course number 4 for me.
That's also my number 4. Great album. I mean, you basically said it all.
Yeah, sorry.
First one, that's, ICS Vortex sounds great on here. Kind of cool hearing him in the old days doing like the raspy stuff and the clean stuff, right? I mean, that's he doesn't do that anymore, which is pretty interesting, or very little.
Right. Yeah, he's such a cool guy too. Everyone meets him except me. Like, all my friends have met him. Like, oh yeah, he's around the corner. I'm like, oh great. But I was supposed to last year they were supposed to tour, and that got canceled, of course. So hopefully we get him again. But good choice. Yeah. So now we're in the top 3, aren't we?
We are.
So you talked about the bias against or for newer albums, right? So the recency bias in metal, generally goes the other way. There's an unrecency bias, like you said. You usually get attached to older albums and all that stuff. And even though, like I said, Colossus was my favorite, I mean, we're in the top 3, and you know what I haven't put up yet, but I'm going with True North. I have no problem doing that, because these albums are just that good. You have Lights, beautiful song, Thunderous, which is the heavier side of them, and Up North, which is that sort of Colossus Ad Noctem type, just like they make these anthems about the North and about winter, and they do it like they could write like advertisements for living up north. Like, it's just they make it so glorious, like, and then you hear it and you're like, yes, snow, cold.
No, I'm gonna go buy a house up there, right?
Yeah, and then you go out and to try to shovel your driveway, and you're like cursing Borknagar, like, this sucks. But yeah, they're just amazing, and they keep their focus. It's all about nature, the elements. And like you said, man, at this point, especially now, they're just making music because they love it, and it's proggy, it's got the black metal, and it just rules. So I have no problem putting that as my number 3. True.
There you go. I had a feeling they were gonna rank pretty high for you, and I can't argue, because I mean, it's pretty high for me too. I love them. This is a tough catalog to rank. But I think I'm gonna go with my top 3 are gonna be the 3 that I got into first, and that kind of always that's happens with me quite a bit.
Yeah.
But again, all these albums are great. So my number 3 is going to be Empiricism from 2001.
Nice.
Which I like a lot. I mean, I really
Yeah.
like this trio of albums that are coming up here. So this is, and you know what? I don't mind Wintersorg at all. Granted, I like ICS Vortex a little bit better. I think he's a little bit better singer, but the music on these albums are so great. I mean, that's the thing. It's even though, yeah, this would be a perfect album if you switch the singers, but I still like Wintersorg. This is the last one with Jens Ryland for like 10 years, right?
Yeah,
for a while. So, Vortex left here, but still bombastic, still brutal. The Genuine Pulse crushes. What else we got here? Black Canvas, great song. Soul Sphere, Inherit the Earth. A lot of great proggy keyboards on here. And you got Asgeir Mikkelsen's drums, which is just off the charts throughout. So, I mean, yeah, it probably has my second favorite vocalist in the band, but it doesn't matter. The music is just outstanding. So that's my number 3, Empiricism from 2001.
And, when we're doing these rankings, like I think I've said it before, you're comparing a discography against itself. So, you're still holding everything in high regard.
Oh, yeah. There's not a bad album here. Not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yep. And yes, Wintersorg's vocals, Andreas's vocals have grown on me. Have you heard his solo material?
Oh, yeah. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. And it's grown on me. It's grown on me. The Cosmic Genesis, which was back then, stuff he's done now is like heavy. He did Till Fjalls 2. The Till Fjalls, I think it was his first one. And it's got all the elements you love about Borknagar, It's got that type of style to it. It's just more.
He can do it all. I mean, he's like a one-man dynamo, that guy.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's a great guy too. Okay, so number 2 for me, believe it or not, it surprised me too. I didn't realize how much I loved Erd. I love it.
Yeah, it really is good. It really is good.
Well, because it brought back my boy. It had Vortex in it, and I will say that you hit most of the points, but Frostrite, top 3 or 5 song by Borknagar. Holy shit. It's one of those songs that we said that it just gets you going, man. It gets you up. I often said that Borknagar is like, the Peppermint Patty commercial, like, it's like I'm up on a mountain. That's what Borknagar's like. It's like biting into a friggin' Peppermint Patty, which is the least metal analogy I've ever made. And I should probably just.
It's delicious. It's cool. It's frosty, right?
Yeah,
hey.
That's a terrible analogy, but with a sword, Patty and a sword. Just such a great album. Like you said, it hits all of it, man. It's got every element. Love
it. Yeah. My number 2 is Epic from 2004. It's Wintersorg's second album as a vocalist. Really cool album cover. I love the logo. I mean, he even contributes some guitar on this because Jens has left the band. You got Asgeir on drums, and I think he plays bass on this album too. Got some acoustic guitars showing up on this album. So there's like a little bit of flavors that are happening here, which I think are pretty cool. Lots of keyboards, just like the previous albums. Future Reminiscence, killer song.
Yeah.
Got all the different vocal aspects here. You have the clean and the growling vocals. Traveler is just totally intense. Origin, Cyclists, and then of course you got Quintessence on this album, not on the album of the same name. Weird. But I think up at this point, so 2004, this might have been their most adventurous album, I think, to that point. They've since gone places beyond this, I think, since. But, at this point, you really knew where these guys were heading. These guys were just like leaps and bounds. They were growing with every album. I mean, they would take a couple years to put out an album. But, man, you'd hear this and you'd listen to the one before. It's like, oh, that's great. This is even greater. And then you hear the next one. It's like, oh, yeah, they keep going on that upward trajectory. That's just like absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it's not that common. It's tough for bands to keep it going like that. I like that our lists are different. I think we had Archaic in the same.
Yep.
But I like that we have different, impressions of it. We did that same thing with Enslaved. It's the same era.
We did. Yep.
So, Process of Elimination, we all know my number 1 by now is Winter Thrice. And I have no problem. This wrecked me when it came out. Like the Winter Thrice song, which has Garmin in it, and the video is so good. You've got Lars Nedlund, and I don't know if I can convey how much I love Lars Nedlund's singing voice. And obviously I said how much I love Vortexes and how much I love Garms. His newer stuff with Ulver is so, you know, so you have three of my favorite vocalists on a great song. You're going to get my, you know, forget it, undying love here. Rhymes of the Mountain, Cold Runs the River is one of the best goddamn songs. The way they do the keys with the whoa, you know, I have no tone in my voice. But yeah, there's not a weak moment on this album. I mean, it just absolutely friggin' slays. And I have no problem putting it as my, there they are, my favorite.
Oh, yeah, look at that. And, you know, hold up that album cover, too. Let
Oh,
everybody bask in the
Cover?
glory of that. I mean, that's just, yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
You got all the elements that they, you know, the fire, the ice. Yeah, there you go. So when did this came out? 2015, right? Yeah, it's my favorite Borknagar album, without a doubt.
I can't argue that at all. I love it. I love it. But my number one happens to be the first one I ever got. And this is the one that turned me on to this band. And I remember like it was yesterday. So here's a little storytelling time. So back in 2000, I was writing for a webzine, an actual magazine called Sea of Tranquility. I was just a writer for the webzine. And I remember our then editor and publisher, James Bickers, he's the guy who started Sea of Tranquility, the magazine, back in the late 90s. He sent me a package of CDs to review, because that's basically what I was. I reviewed CDs and did the occasional interview. And I opened up this box, and there is this CD by this band called Borknagar that I never heard of before. And I sent him an email, and I was like, oh, I never heard of this band. Are they any good? He goes, they're going to be the next big thing in symphonic black metal. Trust me, you'll really dig that because you like the proggy stuff. And I remember listening to this, and I was like, oh, that's different. Because again, you know, in 2000, I really wasn't listening to black metal. I was just starting to get into some of the extreme stuff a little bit. Like I just started to get into Opeth. So this really was like the second like extreme metal band that I started to listen to. And again, that's 21 years ago. And
a great place to start.
Yeah, it really is a good place to start. And there were a lot of people like really talking about this band at this time. So I really like this album a lot. Again, you know, it's probably not as proggy as a couple the albums that were coming after it, but it's still, it's really heavy. It's still pretty adventurous, I think. Vortex sounds good. This is the only album to my recollection that was produced and mixed by Peter Togren, right? At the Abyss Studios.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think it's the only time they worked with him for whatever reason.
Wow. Yeah. You know what?
But it's still quite progressive. Yeah, it sounds it. This album has a different sound than some of the other ones. But man, you know, Rivalry of Phantoms, the presence is ominous. You know, Colossus, like you mentioned earlier. There's so many great songs on here. Asgeir Mikkelsen is on here on drums. I believe this is the first album he appears on with them. Ruins of the Future is absolutely brutal. Great guitars and keyboards. Great clean vocals, great growling vocals. Revolt is another good one. Man, it's just so good. Love that cover. And there's you guys on the back. So, but
they would blend the growl with the clean together, and then the way they mixed the keys into it made it. Some people in metal will that don't appreciate keys will say that keys maybe lessen it somehow, but no way. Their use of keys and the voices underpinned it, made it even more powerful.
Yeah.
So great choice.
And you got, now, in saying all that, you have to wonder if maybe one of the reasons why this band was not that much of a live band. I mean, how do you recreate this stuff on stage? I mean, this stuff is pretty intricate and dense, right? Maybe that's why. Maybe Oyston is just kind of like, you know what? We put a lot of time and effort into making these studio records. I don't know if we could pull that off live. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I've only seen, that's not true. I saw Borknagar in 1999 open for Emperor in New York City. And yeah, I did. I was there.
Wow.
Yep. I think Scow was there too, but we didn't know each other. And, but that show was like, I had to like shake myself years later when I didn't realize at the time how exclusive that would be. And,
that's pretty monumental. Yeah.
Yeah. And I tell you what, I'll never forget it because I didn't drink back then. So I have every memory. And Vortex walked out. They just walked out on stage. It was a small place. And he just said, "This is how we do it in Norway." And they just started playing. And I was like, oh, I like how they do it in Norway. But I was into them. I chatted with Jens that night, and they just were they recreated it, you know. And I think when they played Maryland, they had a good sound at Rams Head Club in Baltimore. They had a good sound, so they were able to recreate it, but not, yeah, like that type of music doesn't often, you know, get recreated live that easily.
Yeah, yeah. Oh well. But anyway, we got the albums to enjoy, and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So there you have it, everybody. Ranking the albums of Borknagar. I'm sure in another year or so they'll come out with another platter, and we'll be like, "Oh shit, where does the new album lie in that whole ranking system there?" It's like,
yeah.
I don't know.
So much fun.
So there you have it. If you have not listened to this band and you've stayed with us this long, they're going to be like, "Well, you guys had completely different lists. Where should I start?" Well, you know what? I would be very happy to tell you to start from the latest albums and work your way back. It really doesn't matter where you start. I mean, as you saw by Nick's ranking, the later albums are fantastic and among their best. And I will agree with that. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, Pete. Probably Winter Thrice and True North. A lot of our fan base here that appreciates. I mean, if you can listen to Opeth, you know, and you like that Dream Theater, this is like a little Dream Theater with blackened edges, like old Dream Theater with blackened edges.
Yeah, and if you like Enslaved, if you like what Enslaved is doing with all this kind of progressive rock stuff there with the harsh and clean vocals, that's, you know, these guys don't sound like them, but they come from a kind of similar place, I think. So yeah, a fantastic band. Fantastic band. Don't let that black metal thing scare you off if you're kind of new to that subgenre of metal. There's a lot to love here.
They don't sing about Satan.
No, they don't. Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, they're one of those like Immortal and Enslaved. And Campfire, pretty much. They stayed away from that and went with the whole mystical Norse nature paganism kind of thing.
Yeah. So very cool stuff.
And
so I want to thank what's that?
And science. They're like it's like cool music about nerdy shit about science.
Yeah.
So there you go.
We love nerdy stuff, right?
Yeah.
I want to thank Nick for joining me on this very special episode, Ranking of Borknagar. Of course, you can catch Nick and I together tonight on the Hudson Valley Squares. That's coming up later on tonight, so stay tuned for that. And a lot more stuff happening. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time, right? So for Nick Franco, I am Pete Pardo. We'll see you guys real soon. Take care.
Thank you.